And a round of applause for the filmmaker who went on a journey to bring this movie to life, and for being here from the East Coast. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm going to dive in because I think there's a lot to talk about with very little time. And actually, before I forget, I do want to make sure that you know about my book, because I run out and I'll forget. My book is actually called The Startup Visa. It's a visa guide. Yes, thank you for being my props. Yes. It's a visa guide. Everybody that you're going to see in the film, they would have used this book well if it was available. Essentially, a book about visa guide, what kind of visas you can have, how do you get a green card, how do you do it on your own? That's one thing that happened during the layoff period. How do you get a visa by yourself? How do you get a green card by yourself? And that's what's covered here. So once you see the film and you feel compelled, the book will be available on Amazon. So I'm going to dive in right away. So Vidyut, let's have you stand in the middle.
Okay.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. I want to dive in a little bit about yourself, tell us about you. Who are you? And why this film?
Hi everybody, I'm Vidyut, and it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be standing here. I cannot thank enough, Rita, her entire fantastic team of Tasveer, and to all of you audience. I know, and some of them are going to come after it, probably having chai and samosa. Anyway, but yeah, who am I? So my name is Vidyut, and I came to this country in 2006 as an immigrant on a dependent visa. In fact, my college friend is right here, and we were just doing a quick math. We are meeting after 26 years, and she's in Seattle. Wow. And so I met my husband when she also knows my husband Ram. So we were college sweethearts, and I got married to him. And like a typical married immigrant woman, I came here on a dependent visa. I had a thriving career in the media industry in Mumbai as an executive producer in television networks. I gave it up all for love and marriage. And he told me, you're on H4 visa, by the way, it's a dependent visa. You will not be able to do anything. Fine, we'll figure it out. Come on, how bad can that be, And I came here, and of course, H4 visa and the limitations of that visa hit me so hard that, okay, I'm going to backtrack a bit. So in 2006, February 19th, I arrived. And the very first thing, when you arrive at the airport, at San Francisco International Airport, you have to go through the immigration, okay? And there were two distinct queues I saw. First was labeled as US citizens, obviously, and we were like, okay, fine, we are not in that queue. And then the second queue was labeled aliens. I just froze in that moment. I was like, and I just froze. And my husband, very practical, he's just moving, come on, we have to do the baggage, we have to do the customs. Why are you just standing there? I'm like, wait a minute, who are aliens? And he said in a very matter-of-fact way, that's us, immigrants. I'm like, what? We are called aliens? He's like, okay, can we have this conversation later? I said, yes. So throughout the journey from San Francisco to Santa Clara, where we were supposed to start our married life together because he worked in the Silicon Valley, I was grumpy, I was sad, because I felt so unwelcome. Like, who would in their right mind call anybody alien? Trust me, that was the trigger. So that was the trigger, and the thought of doing something about this and being from the media world obviously had started at that moment. However, I did wait because I was in H4, then I got onto F1 visa, I studied at San Francisco State, and I started actually working on a H4 visa movie. But then I realized that the problems of H4 and the limitations of H4 are just a symptom of the problem. There's a much larger problem, the broken immigration system and how it treats immigrants, and different kinds of immigrants, okay? I'm not just talking about high-skilled legal immigrants. Illegal, undocumented, refugees. So I said, oh my God, this topic is much beyond my scope right now. So I went ahead and made another film, which was on PBS, about deaf people in India. I enjoyed making that, but this topic stayed with me. So much so that when I got my green card and after I became a citizen, I pursued this. So in 2017, actually, we actively started filming this film. And we, of course, went through the hurdles of pandemic, making an indie film with limited budget, just poured in everything, all savings that I had, because it was a high-skilled immigration documentary, there was not much traction or sympathy for it. So people used to say, oh, wow, you're making a film about immigration? Great. Are you covering illegal and undocumented immigrants? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm laser-focused on high-skilled immigration. So that was always an obstacle. But I was fully committed to this because I was so triggered, and my husband actually suggested I should call it Alien. Because he said, I have seen how much you were disturbed by that, so So that was the whole trigger. Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Thank
well,
you.
well, kudos to your husband and kudos to you for doing this. So you talked about producing a movie, this film, and having written books and knowing what a production it is to get anything off the ground and out of your head. Tell us a little bit about how you made this film. And, you know, it was the pandemic. You mentioned the word pandemic. Tell us a little bit about the making of this film.
Yeah, so 2017 we started actually actively filming, and however I have to talk about my great friend and one of the lead characters in the film, Gitika. And I have to mention her because we filmed with her. She's Seattle based, by the way, and I cannot thank you enough, Gitika, for being here today. She's a strong advocate of human rights, high-scale immigration rights. So to give you, an example, so I just happened to, talk to Gitika through an organization that I was collaborating with, Immigration Voice. They were helping me find characters because try and understand, talking about immigration is not easy. It's almost stigmatized. It's almost something that you want to just, push under the carpet. Like everything is going fine. We have visas, we have good homes, we send our kids to, good schools, we travel. However, there's this niggling issue. There's a sword hanging on your throat all the time, on your neck, sorry, all the time. And I spoke to Gitika through Immigration Voice, and we just connected instantly. But we realized there were logistical issues because it was the peak of pandemic. She was in Seattle, I was in Connecticut. How was I going to do that? So we shot with her, literally, of course, using Zoom. And Gitika was so proactive. She used whatever gadgets she had at her home so that we get high resolution footage. So we shot the interviews like that. Now, however, what do we do with the B-roll? Again, I couldn't travel, so I have Simon here. I cannot thank him enough. He's the cameraman who actually worked during the pandemic's, period. And Gitika and Simon were absolutely amazing. Whatever they did, they masked each themselves. They just made sure that they stayed safe. And we, Simon knows the process. Like I literally used to write the shots that I want, and we used to constantly talk. It was like remote directing the film.
Wow.
So. And then once, even before I got vaccinated, I traveled to two places. One was in Kansas. One of the characters in the film is from Kansas, and one in Bloomington. And again, it was 2021, so we were not really out of it, and I was not even vaccinated, but I checked with them, can I come to your home? So I did not carry the crew, so it was almost DIY. I did it all.
Wow.
So, but, I had to capture the stories because the film was so topical and it had to be made. I did not want to wait for the pandemic to get over, wait for the funds to come. I said, no, this has to be made. Cannot define the topicality of the issue more than now, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Geetika, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. She's our homegrown Seattleite. Thank you. Well, Geetika, I have a question for you, and answer in any way you wish. You have a different name in the film itself. And as somebody who speaks to reporters and various different media all the time, it's very difficult to have people speak up. Can you talk a little bit about the process of what made you eventually stand up and have your voice heard, and why use a different name?
Hi. I'm a psychologist. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And my biggest fear had been that all the immigration advocacy that I had been doing, I was working with both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, and there is one independent guy out in Maine. But we were speaking to all members from both sides of the aisle, and the amount of hate I received as an advocate from everybody on both sides of the aisle. I was on Twitter speaking about how those of us who migrate to the United States, to a country that's built on genocide, built on slavery, who live in indentured servitude because our immigration visas are tied to our organizations. We migrate to countries because we have dreams, but we are also asked to adapt to our own oppression, and I have a problem with this. For this tweet, I received hate. I received calls at my workplace. Thankfully, it was my former workplace because I didn't update LinkedIn, and my former workplace had no idea what was going on, which was perfect. But it really, really scared me. And my husband was really afraid because of where we lived, that if anybody knows where we live, the door is right next to the street. People will come to our doorstep, and what do we do? So when we had finally moved and we were living in this new place, and I knew there was going to be footage from our home, my husband again asked me, do you have to do this? And I was like, who am I not to do this? How can I not do this? When I first moved to the United States as an international student, a lot of my work happened to be with folks who were asylum seekers, folks who were refugees, and I always felt this deep sense of gratitude that I was in what I thought a very stable pathway. I also did my research around people who migrated from Afghanistan to the US against the backdrop of 40 years of war. And I realized that people migrate with whatever pathway they find. Refugees take work visas if they can find them, because refugee visas are fucking hard to get. And I knew that I felt so blessed for my pathway, my paperwork. It was my own immigration story that made me realize, oh God, we are so dispensable. We are so dispensable. The stability we believe we have in this country can flip on a dime, because our work visas are likely to get revoked for the flimsiest of reasons. And we will be deported. We will be self-deported. We will be asked to pay for our own tickets. The USCIS will not tell us, we will take you. They will tell us to leave on our own. So I knew this story, this immigration story of those of us who migrate using the legal pathway is under-known, it's underappreciated, it's under-sympathized with, because the assumption is that people think the immigration system works, and that's the biggest lie I knew I had to break. Becoming an immigration advocate has made me the strongest ally in the social justice movements I've ever participated in. I am a better ally and an accomplice today because of what I have seen I've had to give up of clear narratives when we are advocating for ourselves. So when Vidyut said, hey, I don't know you, but you want to do this? And I was like, fuck yes. However, can we not put my name in it? Because if anybody ever Googles my name again, and they go to this documentary, I don't want my own career in jeopardy again, because goodness knows people don't get nuance. And if you're doing bipartisan immigration advocacy against the 45th regime, under the 45th regime, it was the most heartbreaking experience of my life. And I needed people to know why. And I needed to do this movie because I need people to know why democracy and the legal immigration system is broken, and they need to know why. And Alien was the movie I could see Vidyut making, and I knew Alien was the movie that Vidyut had the courage to actually talk about, because goodness knows nobody had any sympathy for us.
Very, very powerful, Geetika, because having practiced immigration law since 2006, I've seen it firsthand with every demographic, every industry, and having been an advocate for all these years and written many books. This is not my first book, many books on advocacy, how to change the law. I really appreciate your bravery. Really, really appreciate your bravery. You have some other characters, and one of them was Sunaina. And Sunaina has actually come to Tasveer in the past. She is a Tasveer friend. Can you talk a little bit about her and finding the other characters as well?
Sure. Yeah, so we have 5 stories in the film, and some of the, I mean, if I could just quickly talk about some of the editorial decisions we took. So if you look at the film, I mean, and if you have expectations that, probably we are going to talk about the politics behind, the broken immigration, I'm sorry to say we are not talking about that, because we are talking about emotions, raw emotions. Because I do feel when Geetika very emphatically said, the immigration system is broken, I think overall, not only in our community, South Asian community, but across the public domain in the entire country, there is no acceptance of the problem. So if you want to solve the problem, the first thing is to accept that there is a problem, and then understand also along with that, right? So this movie is made with the objective of just letting people know that, guys, there is a problem. Understand it, and then accept that there is a problem. And then, yes, there are a lot of solutions around. Everybody has a solution, obviously, like everybody can become a filmmaker, everybody can become a designer. So people, do come up and say, oh, we have a solution for this. Great, we'll listen to you. However, first to understand what the problem is and accept it. So to come back to your question, so of course, there was a lot of, legwork that went around, where I had to talk to a lot of people, because sometimes people had very compelling stories, but they were scared. They were just scared to come on camera and talk about it. And that's why kudos to people like Yutika, and I have 4 other families. And they were just like, they are the real brave hearts. All I did was kept the camera on, asked them questions. Sometimes I did not even have to speak. You will see some of the stories. It was almost like a therapeutic moment for some, the very first story that you're going to watch actually. It's about a kid, okay, just imagine this. It's a reality. She's a kid about to get into her 21st birthday in the next 4 months. Her parents are established doctors, extremely respectful in their community in Illinois. However, just because they don't have their green cards, she will have to self-deport herself in the next 3 months. So that is when we got the family. I went and spoke to, and this was during the pandemic time, so completely DIY filming. So I spoke to them, and it was a very, they told me that it was a very healing moment for them, because in all the 21 years of her life and 18 years of life of her brother, the family had never sat down and spoken about the issue. They didn't have the guts. The doctor couple did not have the guts to talk about it. So when I asked them, when I put the camera in front of them and started asking them questions, they were like, oh my God, as a family, we have never dealt with this issue. So they were very emotional. So there's this one story. The second story is about this highly prolific couple, from Pittsburgh. Entrepreneurs, they are engineers, she's a scientist, the wife is a scientist. And under very extenuating circumstances and after a lot of despair, what happens to their visa status right in the peak of pandemic, you will see. That is the second story. The third story is about a scientist couple who wants to beat all odds but stay in America because they just love America, right? And there's this story, and then Gitika's story, of course, and then Sunana. Sunana's story is very dear to my heart. Her husband was killed by a white supremacist in Kansas in 2017, right? So she has suffered such a colossal, incredible personal loss. However, what happened? She was on a dependent visa. Now, just understand, the scope of this story. It's not just about personal loss, but it's an immigration story also, because she was on a dependent visa. So the US government was telling her, you cannot come back after the final rights of your husband. So the congressman from Kansas had to intervene and somehow get her back, and then she had to fight so much to get her own H-1B, because again, she was on a dependent visa. If you are on a dependent visa, what that means is the primary is your husband, right, or the spouse. However, almost like you see the statistics, almost 80 to 85% H-4 visas, dependent visas, are held by women. That's the reality. So if you're on a dependent visa, you have to literally self-deport if the primary visa holder dies or something happens and he or she is not able to work. So she went through, just unimaginable amount of not only her personal loss, anxiety, despair, but she fought it through, and she got her green card eventually, and she's doing such fantastic advocacy work for high-scale immigration, and we screened the film. The world premiere was in Kansas. What would have been the 39th, I think, I hope I get the age right, but 39th birthday of her husband, because he was killed when he had just turned 33, I think. So she just asked me, Vidyut, can we celebrate his legacy on his 39th birthday? I said, absolutely. I'll make sure the film is done, and we screened it there. And in the heart of Midwest, okay, just to understand the optics of it, in the heart of Midwest, there were almost like 125 people in the audience. Most of them were not immigrants, and they asked us such compelling questions because everybody was just baffled. And another funny thing I'm going to say, if you guys watch the film and if you feel, gosh, this is so absurd, great, that's the success of the movie. Because it is completely, absolutely beyond anybody's common sense to understand the complicated and the convoluted system that we have. And that's what in very simple and very straightforward way we've tried to explain what exactly is H-1B, H-4, green card backlog, and I hope it resonates with you. But yeah, so these are the 5 stories that we have, and again, it's an emotional journey of all the characters. So there's no bickering about, whether immigrants should come here, whether we should have H-1Bs. now. So yeah.
Well, beautifully said. And I just want to take a moment because I think people will be thinking, well, why are they waiting forever for a green card? And I'll give a quick mini tutelage on this. The government, United States immigration laws were set in the 1950s, 60s, and then in the 1990s. That's when we had the last set of laws that shape what we have now. And 140,000 green cards are given out each year. And if you think about a dartboard, this is the analogy I give. If you think about a dartboard, and in the center is bullseye. That's preference, first preference, EB1. Not a lot of waiting time, although that fluctuates, and right now, Indian citizens are waiting a long time. Then the outer circumference is EB2, and EB3, EB4, EB5. And the waiting time is sort of like long compared to where you are in this. And then think about a pizza. You slice this into like a pie chart. And each little segment, 7%. Every country gets 7% of these 140,000 green cards. And what has happened over time is that people apply for these green cards and they're now in a waiting line. And 140,000 is not enough. Immigration reform is necessary to increase that number. At this point, there are millions of people waiting in the line, so to speak. When you hear the line, there's no real line. That's the system. And because of that, there are numerous legal issues that come up. Your child is growing up, you're a dependent. And this particular film, one of the reasons that I sort of gravitated towards it is because so many different legal issues are touched in each person's life. So when clients come to me and we talk about how do we solve it, the legal solutions are actually not there because immigration reform is necessary. So when you are listening to each person's story, take that away. What do you want people to take away from it?
Well, first, I know I got a indication that we have to start the film, and I know you guys can't wait to watch the film, I guess. I just want to inform and educate the people. That's the primary motive of making this film, because seriously, there has not been any feature documentary, of 83 minutes that has been made on this issue, and I really needed that much time to emphasize the importance of this issue. So I would say my main objective is to inform, educate, accept that there is a problem so that we all collectively as a community can help each other to find solutions. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. A round of applause for Geetika and Vidyut. Thank you so much for this amazing film. It's going to go far. And everyone, if you have a chance to talk about immigration with your neighbors and friends, this film will give you some talking points. So thank you so much. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you, Tamina. Thank you.